Welcome aboard the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon podcast, where we're dedicated to helping first-time and experienced boat buyers find the right boat at the best price so they have years and years of boating fun, because life truly is better on a boat. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon YouTube channel. Don't pay too much for your next boat. Just visit boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save to watch a short video. Now, let's hop aboard and have some fun.
Welcome to the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon series. I am your host, Captain Matt, and today we're talking about carbon monoxide and boating, what you need to know. This is a very serious issue, and unfortunately this year, the reason I'm making this video is this year there were several fatalities due to carbon monoxide poisoning, and they were totally avoidable. So I wanted to do a video to let people know what it's all about, because I've seen some posts on social media where people are concerned, rightfully so, because they just don't know enough about it. And I wanted to give you the facts of what you need to do to make boating a very safe activity for you. So we're going to talk about what it is, where it comes from. We're going to talk about backdrafting, how to avoid and how to detect carbon monoxide poisoning. We're going to talk about generators. One of the generators, there was an issue involved with the generator. There was also an issue involved with backdrafting. We're going to talk about both of those, and we're going to talk about how to keep you and your family safe. Brought to you by Boat Buyers Secret Weapon Toolkit. You can grab your free copy if you're in the market for a boat. Grab it. It's an incredibly valuable tool, and thousands of people now have got their hands on this, and you should too. So what is carbon monoxide? Well, it's called the silent killer because it's colorless, it's odorless, and it's tasteless, and it's a gas that can, when you breathe in that carbon monoxide, it can make it harder for your body to use oxygen to keep you alive. So it can act very, very quickly in some of the way the boat produces it. And it's produced anytime that fuel like gas, oil, kerosene, wood, charcoal are burned when there's not enough oxygen to produce carbon dioxide. Okay, so what are the sources? Well, stovetop, boilers, heaters, your car. So this isn't something that's exclusive to boating. Similar things can happen in RVs, gas fireplaces, but we're going to focus on generators and boat engines, obviously. So why is it an issue, and what do you need to know about it? Well, the first thing you need to know is that carbon monoxide, it's heavier than air. So when it's heavier than air, it means it's going to sink to the bottom. So it's going to sink into the cabin, it's going to sink into the cockpit, to the floor, and it's going to sink to the water level outside the boat. And all of these areas, we need to be aware that it could potentially be there, because you don't know it. It's colorless, odorless, tasteless. You have no idea it's there, but it can be a major, major problem. So a couple situations that come up in a bow rider or a deck boat, in really any boat that's open in the back. So what can happen is you're cruising along nice and slow. You've got the bow up slightly, so you're kind of blocking the breeze coming. Maybe there's even a tailwind coming from the back, a little breeze that's blowing your direction. You're going nice and slow, and that carbon monoxide, it's not dispersed by the air like if you were going 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, or like in your car where you're cruising and you've got the windows up and you're enclosed. So this can happen, and that's called backdrafting. And basically what happens is that tail breeze, or the way that the airflow goes, if you're just cruising nice and slow, it kind of creates a suction back into the cockpit, and now that carbon monoxide is gathering in the low paces by the engine cover in that back part of the cockpit. And what's happening, it happened in one of the situations, is they were cruising slow like that for an extended period of time doing, I think they were wake surfing, and there was a little bit of a tail breeze, and a young kid got sick and ended up passing away because of it. So if you're cruising slow, if you're doing water sports, especially wake surfing, you want to make sure that the it's vented, and you want to make sure that you pay attention to where that breeze is coming from. And every now and again, get going. Open up the windshield, open up the wind dam if you have that in, and maybe speed up a little bit to get some of that airflow and clean everything out. And don't let somebody sit for 2 hours of surfing in that seat by the swim deck. Get people up in the bow so that there's some fresh air coming through. So that's the first thing that can happen. Other times it can be when you're sitting at anchor. When you're sitting at anchor and maybe a boat or two is sitting there, and the fumes could even come from another boat, from their engine running or their generator running, and that carbon monoxide, it's going to gather in those low places. If there's no breeze, if there's no wind when you're at anchor, it's just going to sit on top of the water. It's going to sit in the low portions of the boat. And again, nobody knows it's there. It's colorless, it's odorless, it's tasteless, and you have no idea it's there, and it's heavier than air, so it's sinking down and staying right where it is in a lot of cases. Another area where this has happened is they call it teak surfing, where you grab onto the swim platform and you cruise down. This is a bad idea for a lot of reasons, but if you grab onto that swim platform, especially on inboard boats, is where this was the most common, and you're cruising nice and slow, dragging them back to the dock or wherever you're going, they're breathing that carbon monoxide right in. It's almost like sticking a garden hose in your tailpipe and running it into the driver's seat. It's just coming right in, and at that level, at that high level of carbon monoxide, it can take minutes to start feeling effects and to cause major problems. Another area where it can come in is you've got the generator running and you're just sitting in the open water anchored out. All of those fumes are typically going to be vented towards the stern of the boat, probably under the swim platform. So if you go under that swim platform, it's concentrated very high and can happen very quickly, where the symptoms can set in, kind of that air pocket under the swim step. And the same thing if you're just running the engine while you're sitting there. So there's some easy ways to avoid this, but that's what it is. That's why you have this sticker on your boat. It can cause brain damage or death. This is serious business. Engines and generators. Remember, it does include generators. So what are the symptoms? Well, headaches, dizziness, weakness, nausea, vomiting, chest pain, confusion, and even passing out. So imagine if you're in the water and you pass out without a life vest on, or even with a life vest on, and your face goes in the water, drowning can be a very quick thing to happen. And I'll tell you, I've been involved in a situation where we were running a boat. It was a big 40-foot cruiser. We had the camper canvas up, and we were just idling out, talking about, we were doing a training with this guy, idling out, and all of a sudden he started getting a little bit sick. The alarm went off, and he ended up throwing up off the back of the boat. And I'd been around boats for 40 years at that time, 35 years or so at that time. And it's the first time I'd seen it. But luckily, we caught it in time, and it was just a uncomfortable situation. Now, if you're drinking, or if you're sleeping on a boat, let's say you're drinking excessively and you pass out and this sets in, it can be deadly. Sleeping on a boat, it can be deadly. That is one of the major causes, are people falling asleep in their cruiser. Those fumes gather up because they don't have the generator, or they've got the engine running for some reason. And it could be a bad situation. That's why it's law to have a carbon monoxide detector in your boat. Now, they're always going to be in a cruiser. It's by law to have them in a cruiser, anything that has sleeping quarters on it. But a lot of times they may not be working. If you buy a used boat, you want to make sure that, one, you test it often. That you replace the batteries, and the unit needs to replace every 7 to 10 years or so. So if you're testing it often, you'll know when yours isn't working. And do not ever, 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 ever disable this carbon monoxide detector, because if you are sleeping in your boat and there's a carbon monoxide leak, let's say that there's something happened in the exhaust, or an exhaust or a vent got clogged by something, maybe a bird nest or who knows what, you will have no idea. And if you're asleep, you will never wake up. And do not ignore it. If it goes off, never ignore it. It's the most annoying sound, hearing these carbon monoxide detectors. And when you test it, it's annoying and it goes off for an extended period of time. But heed the warning. Like I said, I was on this 40-foot cruiser, and the guy started feeling the signs of it. The alarm went off. We opened up the camper canvas. We opened up the throttle a little bit, got a little bit more speed than just going idle. He got out of the swim step, and like I said, after throwing up a little bit, in 20, 30 minutes, he was feeling better. But thankfully everything worked properly. We heard the detector. We got the camper canvas open, and everything was fine. So how do you avoid it? Well, big thing is turn off your engine and your generator if you're going to be swimming. If you're anchored out and you're swimming, go ahead and just turn those things off, and to avoid that carbon monoxide production at all. If you've got some breeze is a good thing. It's going to move that air around, mix things up, and get that carbon monoxide out of there in high volumes, high capacity. Don't cruise with that bow high and slow. One, puts out a huge wake. It's not efficient. It's not great for the boat, but also it gives that potential for that backdraft to form. And if you have a little bit of a tailwind to add on to it, it can be disastrous. So get going. Cruise. If you're gonna idle. If you're gonna cruise at a higher speed, get up on plane or go a little bit faster. Don't just do that 5 mile an hour cruise, and pay attention to what the wind is doing. Pay attention anytime you're cruising and you've got that wind behind you, that tailwind, and just be aware. Know that carbon monoxide is something that is just part of boating. It's part of an engine, and it's part of having a generator running. Be aware, know it's there, pay attention to conditions where it could potentially come in. Young kids are much more susceptible. They're not as big. Their lung capacity is not as big, and it can be very quick acting on children. So know it's there, be aware of the situation, what to look for, when it could be accumulating, so that you can avoid those situations and you can take proper action, which is venting things. Really just opening up and just cruising is one of the best ways to do it. So another warning that I want to give is generators. Generators are a major cause. As a matter of fact, most of the fatalities in the year they did the study, over 70% were related to generator issues. Either the generator was not vented properly, the generator was not installed properly, which means it wasn't exhausted out the right way, or there was a portable generator on the boat that wasn't exhausted at all. And those carbon monoxide fumes were just gathering in the engine compartment, or they had it sitting on the bow or on the swim platform. And based on whatever else was going on, those fumes started gathering, and they either ended up down in the engine compartment, they ended in the cockpit, or they floated on the water where people were swimming. And unfortunately, it's the silent killer for a reason. So be very cautious. If you're putting a generator on a boat or putting a new generator in a boat, don't cheap out, because your life truly is on the line. And this is not hyperbole. This is something that happens, unfortunately, every year. There's deaths due to carbon monoxide, and most of the time it's associated with a generator. Now that surfing real close to that boat is a thing, it's happening even more often because people are putting in that ballast, getting that nose way up, and going slow to create that huge wake. Well, that's the perfect situation for the backdrafting to happen. You get a little bit of a tailwind, you're surfing for hours on end, you've got some kids on the boat, and it is a disaster waiting to happen. So just be aware of it, and if you're aware of it, You can speed up a few times. You can get the wind going. Open up the windshield and get some airflow through there, and you'll be in much better shape. So if you enjoyed this video, put your comment. If you've had a situation, you've got some other tips, put them down in the comments. We'd really love it. Like the video if you found this valuable, so we can get, especially this one, so we can get this message out to every boater, so that we can get that number down to 0, because people know how simple it is to avoid these issues, and they're aware of it. Grab that toolkit if you're buying a boat, and YouTube has recommended some videos for you. Thanks a lot, and we will talk to you next time.
Let's pull up the anchor and run this podcast back to the dock. We'll be back again with another helpful and fun episode next time. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, visit boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/guest, and I'll help offer insights into your boat research and shopping experience. Also, we'd appreciate it if you took just 2 minutes to rate and review this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. It helps others find us so we can help more boaters. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it in your boating groups on social media. They will certainly thank you. And by the way, if you haven't already, grab your free Boat Buyers Secret Weapon Toolkit at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. And so you don't pay too much for your next boat, visit boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save for a short video. Now, before we go, I want to leave you with a few first-time boating tips for when you own your new boat. Number 1, know your local boating laws, basic navigation rules, and how to operate your boat safely. It'll make boating even more fun for everyone. 2, be aware of your wake at all times and pay attention to no wake zones, because you are responsible for your wake. When maneuvering at slow speeds, you can put out an enormous wake. If going slow, be courteous, save some fuel, and drop down to idle speed, just in forward gear, to ensure there is no wake. This could save you an expensive ticket and will keep you from being that guy on your waterway. Number 3, boats do not have headlights. They have docking lights, specifically made for seeing in tight quarters and docking. Do not turn your docking lights on while cruising down the water. It can blind other boaters and is very dangerous, and again, could save you an expensive ticket. Number 4, follow the maintenance schedule for your boat. Change the oil, impeller, gear lube, winterize if you need to winterize in your area. Inspect your trailer tires, bearings, and grease the hubs if you're a trailer boater to ensure you don't experience expensive and unnecessary repairs that will impact your boating time. Number 5, always double check your plug is in, your battery is charged, and the fuel is full before heading out for a day on the water. It could just save your boating day. And if you're a trailer boater, I've got a few extra tips. Number 1, at the boat ramp, prepare your boat, your gear, and your guests in the staging area. Then, when you're ready, back down the ramp, unload the boat, head to the parking lot, and right back down to your boat to be fast and courteous to your fellow boaters, and don't tie up that ramp unnecessarily. Next, use transom tie-down straps when trailing your boat. Very bad things can happen if you don't, and they do happen. 3, check everything in the boat is secure before heading down the road. Seat cushions, gear, keys, towels, even tubes and lily pads can get blown out when pulling your boat down the highway or interstate. And most important, have fun. Enjoy your boat and get on the water as much as possible, because life truly is better on a boat. Until next time, this is your friend in boating, Captain Matt.